Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Come over. I'm Ron Freeman. I'm the Sheriff of Forsyth County. Beside me, let me introduce a couple of folks. Lieutenant John Neville in our Major Crimes Unit, Sergeant Brandon Moore, and Detective Tim Connor. They were the primary investigators in this case. And we've got a story to tell you today. And unfortunately, it's a story of criminality, and it's a story of a perversion of our criminal justice system. Because what we have an individual who is already here under an allegation and an arrest for armed robbery, made an attempt and placed a hit to commit murder against that very victim of his armed robbery. Now, we've been doing this for a lot of time between us, and the fact is these are rare cases. Today we'll talk about 5 individuals that we've taken into custody through extraordinary detective work and do that. So the story starts in 2018 with an armed robbery that occurred here in Forsyth County. That armed robbery, the suspect was not very good at his crime, left evidence at the scene that resulted in his arrest. That individual was Kwame Abayamo. He's a 31-year-old out of Douglasville, Georgia. Information came to me that was loosely connected that said there may be an attempt to murder the victim in this armed robbery case. I gave that to our Major Crimes Unit. They began looking into it, and it wasn't but a few days before they developed enough information to believe that yes, there was significant reason to believe that this might be what is happening. So Kwame Abayamo, he's the main figure in this case. Again, he was arrested, I said 18 and 19 for the armed robbery and motor vehicle hijacking. He is the one who developed the mastermind plan to murder this armed robbery victim. He coordinated with 2 females, a cellmate, and another individual. Now, they used various means of communication, including coded messages, to facilitate the hiring of a hitman to ultimately murder our victim. Here's the deal. He wasn't very good at his first crime. He left evidence at the scene during that robbery that led to his arrest. During this investigation, we found more evidence of his original armed robbery that's going to be used against him in trial on that. He's not very good at what he does. So the story goes as Kwame took his cellmate, who was in the same pod here in the Forsyth County Jail. Now, Shelby Fairley, 29 years old. Shelby is currently in the Forsyth County Jail for serious sexual assault felonies, including a charge of sexual assault involving a child, okay? He occupied the same cell block as Kwame, and at Kwame's request, he contacted another individual about killing our victim in the armed robbery. And he continued to communicate with that individual through a series of coded messages and other things. So that led to, obviously, a continuing investigation to try to determine, hey, how is this going to happen? Because we didn't know. So one of the interesting things is, in this original armed robbery case, the courts have been shut down due to emergency order during the pandemic. They just opened back up. Kwame's case was the first up for consideration in Forsyth County in our Superior Court. So we knew time was of the essence, that our victim was in danger. So we contacted our victim as soon as we determined, hey, there was some validity to this. We let our victim know what was going on, made sure we helped him ensure his safety, and then we continued the investigation. That's where these gentlemen came in so well. Kwame, the mother of his children, Clarissa Castillo Gomez, 30 years old, of Douglasville, Georgia, she handled Kwame's business while he was in jail. She received a note that was smuggled out of the jail by another inmate here in Forsyth County. She facilitated and handled the money to hire the first hitman, who evidence indicates actually fled with the money and didn't commit to actually carrying out the murder. So then they communicated with the second hitman who was going to carry out the murder. Now, she also, when we arrested her, we found information of our victim, including his address, his photograph, his parents' information. So we knew very quickly that our victim was in serious danger very, very fast. That led us to Malia Franklin, 19 years old, also of Douglasville, Georgia. She's Kwame's current girlfriend. Now, she also facilitated messages, handling money, and arranged to meet the alleged hitman She also possessed photos of the victim and biographical information of our victim. So this is a very evidence-laden case. That led us to 30-year-old Quentin Ingram. Quentin Ingram is the alleged hitman. He is, hold on, because it goes back, Shelby Fairley's brother. He agreed to murder the victim, and he coordinated with Clarissa and Malia to facilitate this. He also possessed photos and biographical information of our victim. We believe our victim was hours, if not days, from an attempt on his life. Now, this is an individual who was charged with a violent felony, Kwame, and this individual took it upon himself to try to eradicate the witness in his case. Evidence indicates that they were going to do this for the lowly sum of $6,000. They were going to take the life of a man who was already a victim in an armed robbery case for $6,000 to keep him from testifying. So that's the story of how this happened. Now I want to share with you as well, we got a statement from our victim, and obviously we're not going to identify that victim at this time, but I want to read to you, if I may, what his statement was. He said, when I was made aware of the suspect in my robbery case wanted to have me murdered, obviously I was concerned and scared. That all seems surreal and something that you'd see in the movies. I received the news that all the people had been arrested, and it was a sigh of relief. The detectives kept me up to date, made sure I was aware of what was going on, and I can't believe how determined and caring these deputies were in making sure I was safe and these individuals were arrested. In 3 decades of doing this, it's the first time that I have seen this many individuals conspire to commit the murder of a victim of a crime. It's not a case to take lightly. Make no bones about they're not very good at their craft or what they're trying to do. But this is a serious case. This is, we have the best criminal justice and judicial system known on this planet. And these people were trying to pervert that and take the life of a crime victim. So there are some other individuals who may be peripherally involved in this. We continue the investigation. If they are involved, expect to see one of these gentlemen and some of our other deputies on your front doorstep. Our victim is safe. He remains in constant contact with us, and we're going to continue that. We're working closely with our prosecutor's office. We met with them before we had this press conference. We're limited in what we're going to respond to in questions. We'll take some questions, but we need to make sure that we preserve the evidence that we need to. I will tell you this, that also during a search of Kwame's jail cell, Mr. Abiyamo's jail cell, we found the cipher or decryption to the coded messages in his jail cell, which of course was a key to being able to decipher those messages and determine that those messages were clearly intended to arrange the murder of this armed robbery victim. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I know you have press packages. If you have any questions, we'll take some questions. Understand there's some things we may not be able to answer.
Did they know the victim, the armed robbery victim, beforehand, or was this like a completely random armed robbery?
So it was a relatively random armed robbery, kind of like a better word, a social media marketplace type meeting that resulted in an armed robbery in which they stole a motor vehicle.
Do you remember the date or approximately when that happened in 2018? It's in the press
November 2017.
No, November of 2017. So this has been going on. Mr. Abiyamo, the main mastermind in this, he's been in our jail since 2019. He's been in jail for going on 2 years, waiting for trial. He originally was released on bond on that armed robbery charge. He had his bond revoked for a violation. He's been sitting in jail for 2 years. It was only until this case resurfaced and the courts were reopening that this plan was hatched.
You mentioned he was sloppy in committing his crimes. Do you have an idea of why he would want to take the victim out if there was already enough evidence to continue with the charges?
As I said, he's not very good at what he does. He wasn't good in the armed robbery. But the other part here is I'm certain that he thought, if this person wasn't here to testify against me, maybe they couldn't continue with the prosecution, even though we had substantial evidence, including DNA evidence, in that original crime. But again, not only has he now been charged with conspiracy to commit murder, we found additional evidence that points to him as again being guilty of, or the primary suspect in, that armed robbery. So we found evidence on that 2017 armed robbery again.
So just to clarify, he hasn't actually had his day in court, and he thought if he took this guy out ahead of time, potentially, that this might go away?
Correct. This is about a month-long investigation by our major crimes unit, and that case was coming up about 2 weeks ago. And so again, time was of the essence, but yes, he knew that his day in court was likely coming up. And so he was taking everything he could, doing everything he could, including trying to arrange a murder, to make sure that he didn't have to answer for his first violent felony.
And you said both of those women are his girlfriends? One is the mother of his
One
children?
is the mother of his children, and Malia is his current girlfriend. At least that's what our information tells us at this point. Good.
Was that $6,000 payment made?
So we know there was a payment made to an original, we'll call it a hitman. All right, so we know that that happened, but we believe that person fled with the money. We don't know if it was just they ripped them off or what. We're still under investigation, but we know there was an agreement to pay a sum of money up to $6,000, approximately $6,000, for this completion by, again, the person that we have in jail charged with that. I'll get to him here, which is Quinn Ingram.
So has he been arrested?
All 5 of these individuals have been arrested and are currently in the Forsyth County Jail without bond.
What are the charges against each one?
Charges are conspiracy to commit murder. Is that correct?
Yes,
sir. Each of the 5 are charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Again, this is a heavily laden evidence-based case. It is rare that we find this much evidence in a criminal case that we investigate. We have suspect statements, we have physical evidence, we have electronic evidence. Again, 3 of the 5 individuals had our victims' biographical information, photograph, and other personal identifying data that we seized from them at their arrest. So obviously, folks, this was not a matter of, hey, I'm running my mouth and I'm talking about this. This was a significant criminal effort to take this man out, and he's a victim of a crime.
Do you have an idea of what method Ingram was using to carry out the deed?
No, at this, I'll let Detective Tim Connor, the primary detective on the case, but I don't know if we know that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was planning to shoot him. The evidence that we have suggests that, but I don't have a solid answer to that question.
I think some of the evidence is indicative of discussions to make his murder look like another crime gone bad, and to, again, blame the victim of a violent crime, in this case would have been for his own death, to make him look like a criminal or someone who was doing something wrong. It doesn't get more heinous than this. And so we are pleased because we know now that our victim has a relative means of safety, and we know that he's also still concerned. The armed robbery case is still pending. All 5 of these individuals, as well as Mr. Albiamo on his armed robbery case, have a presumption of innocence. They have a right to have a jury of their peers consider the evidence, but I know what the evidence says in this conspiracy for murder, and it is strong, and it is prevalent, and it is something that these individuals need to be held accountable for, because how horrible is it, again, I keep saying it, a victim of a violent crime was about to be victimized again, and the twisted plot was to make him look like a bad guy in his own death. That's something in law enforcement we will never put up with. I'd like to, again, just give kudos. Our major crimes unit did phenomenal work. Every detective in our major crimes unit went to work on this. We knew we were hours or days away from a potential attempt on this man's life, and they dug their heels in and they worked their behinds off and brought together what is an example of an excellent criminal prosecutable case.
And
Any other questions?
Yeah, how were those coded messages transmitted? How were they discovered? Can you talk a little bit more about the nature of those?
So they were through, and I hope you'll respect, they were through a variety of means. How we got those, I'm not gonna discuss at this time, but there were a variety of different means of messaging or communication, and we were able to decode a number of those. Some were coded, some were not, but all pointed to one simple fact, and that was the attempted murder of our victim in this case. And we have communication between a number of the individuals, not just one, this one talked to this one, who talked to this one. We have continued communications between a number of these individuals who were all readily and willing participants in this.
So Shelby and Kwame, you said were cellmates, correct?
Yes.
But they didn't know each other before being cellmates? This Shelby guy was just like, oh, my brother will kill him for you?
So at this point, we're not aware of a prior relationship or familiarity. It's still being looked at. Again, even though we have these 5 individuals in custody, this is such a serious case that we're gonna continue. We have to make sure no one else is involved in a criminal manner. And even if someone is involved or peripherally involved in this case, but maybe not to the level of committing a criminal act, we still need to find those individuals, we need to interview those individuals, and we need to make sure that we wrap this case up as tight as possible. So that's the things we're gonna continue to do. Again, Mr. Albiama, this is an attempt to commit a horrible, violent crime. And I'll say this, he should have learned the first time that it didn't work well to commit a violent crime in Forsyth County. To come and try to do this out of our own jail, well, here's another lesson for him. He needs to find another line of work because he's not a good criminal. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? All right, with that, our Public Information Officer, Ms. Miller, will, if you don't have press packages, we've got those for you. Be glad to do it. We appreciate you coming here because I appreciate you telling the story, because crime victims need to know that law enforcement has their back and that they can be safe and testify when they've been so horribly victimized. So it's important we tell that message. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.